Good evening. Welcome to this April 3rd, 2023 meeting of the Norfolk City Council. I'll call the meeting to order and call your attention to the Open Meetings Act posted here in the council chambers. Now please join me in rising for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Granquist.
Here.
Arns.
Here.
Webb.
Here.
McCarthy.
Here.
Murin.
Here.
Snorton.
Here.
Lawson.
Here.
Hildebrand.
Here.
All right, with that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda with one change, adding item number 20, removing item number 20 to the full agenda, to the regular agenda.
So moved.
Motion second, if no discussion.
Your Honor, I'll be abstaining from this vote.
Sure. All right, if no further discussion, please vote.
Voting in the affirmative. Granquist. Arns. Webb. Murin. Snorton. Clausen. Hildebrand. Abstaining from the vote. McCarthy. Motion carries.
Now look for a motion to approve the full agenda as amended.
I'll make a motion for the full agenda. Second.
Motion second, if no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Okay, before we get to the regular agenda, special presentations. Tonight we have a proclamation for April 2023 as Fair Housing Month. The proclamation reads as such: whereas April 11th, 2023 marks the 55th anniversary of the passage of the U.S. Fair Housing Law, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, as amended, which enunciates a national policy of fair housing without regard to race, color, creed, national origin, sex, familial status, and handicap, and encourages fair housing opportunities for all citizens. And whereas the Norfolk Housing Agency and the Norfolk Housing Development Division of the City of Norfolk are committed to highlight the Fair Housing Law, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 by continuing to address discrimination in our community, to support programs that will educate the public about the right to equal housing opportunities, and to plan partnership efforts with other organizations to help assure every American of their right to fair housing. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Josh Moaning, Mayor of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, by the power vested in me, do hereby proclaim April 2023 as Fair Housing Month. I think we have some members of the Norfolk Housing Authority to receive the proclamation.
In their pocket, yeah, it's just that in their pocket hanging out.
Thank you very much. Do you want to introduce yourself and say your role at the housing agency?
I'm Julie Drohoda, the Housing Program Manager for the City of Norfolk Housing Division and Norfolk Housing Agency. I think this is important because all citizens do deserve a place to live that is free from any forms of discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the work you do at the housing agency to make sure that housing inventories are accessible and fair for all Norfolkans. All right, that brings us to our regular agenda, starting with item number 20. We'd look for a motion to consider approval to participate in the 5 new national opioid settlements reached with Teva, Allergan, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart related to prescription opiates, and authorize the mayor to sign the settlement participation forms for each of the 5 settlements.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval to participate in the 5 new national opiate settlements.
Second. Motion and second, and to give us a little background on this, Randy Gates, City Finance Officer.
Yes, Your Honor. You may remember we entered into 2 other similar settlement agreements back in December 20th of 21. These were with Janssen Pharmaceuticals, or Johnson & Johnson, who was one of the main manufacturers of opioids, and then the 3 largest pharmaceutical opioid distributors, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen. Under those settlement agreements, Norfolk expects to receive payments through 2031 with the Janssen agreement, and under the distributors agreements through 2038. So far, we've received $8,499.28 under the distributors agreement and $4,266.26 under the J&J agreement. Mistakenly in the staff memo put the total we've received to date is what we received under the J&J agreement. $12,765.54 is the total that we've received so far under those two agreements. Under the new national opioid settlement agreements, we can expect to receive money over various amounts for each agreement over a different period for each agreement. The TIVA is $15,541.51 through 2035. The Allergan is $92,51.93 through 2029. $20,471.90 under the CVS agreement through 2032. $22,265.91 under the Walgreens agreement through 2037. And the Walmart agreement is all to be paid in 2023, and that's $11,593.89. So the maximum total amounts we'd expect to receive are a little over $79,000 under those 5 agreements. It depends a little bit on how many entities sign up for this. The more Nebraska entities that sign up, the more money everybody will receive through these. But somewhere around $79,000 is what I'd expect we'd receive through 2037 on these agreements. And there's a memo in the agenda packet from the National Opioids Settlement Implementation and Administrator explaining how this works for Nebraska subdivisions. And we'll just simply need to, this will be authorizing the mayor to sign, and I'll forward DocuSign documents to the mayor if this is approved at tonight's meeting for him to sign all 5 of these agreements and answer any questions.
Thank you, Randy.
I do have a question, Randy. So where do those funds go? What area do those funds go into?
That would be up to the city to decide. There's some broad, I think each one of these agreements has a slightly different twist to it, but in general, they're somewhat similar. I pulled out Exhibit E from the TIVA agreement, and it has a schedule of core strategies that they expect this money to be used for one of these core strategies. And there are things like one of the strategies is naloxone or other FDA-approved drug to reverse opioid overdoses, so expand training for people on how to do that, increase distribution of those types of things. Another one is medication-assisted treatment distribution and other opioid-related treatment. So that would increase distribution of those kind of drugs and provide education on how to use those kind of drugs. So it's things similar to that. There's some focus on pregnant and postpartum women as far as their use of opioids, expanding treatment of neonatal abstinence syndrome. A lot of this stuff I'm not really sure what it is, but an expansion of warm handoff programs and recovery services, treatment for incarcerated population, prevention programs, expanding syringe service programs, evidence-based data collection and research analyzing the effectiveness of abatement strategies within the state. And then there's a schedule of approved uses where for each one of those things there's a long list of uses that they consider to be an approved use under each one of those. So that gives you some flavor for what you can do with that money.
Thank you, Randy. Any other questions? Any public comment on this?
Hi, my name is Sasha Bone. I just had a couple questions that I'm hoping that I could get some answers for. The $12,765, where has that been allocated thus far that we've received?
There's been no allocation. There's been no allocation of that to date, so we don't have any use identified for it.
So is it just like in a general fund at that point until you allocate, or how does that work?
It's sitting in our checking account, and it is in the general fund now,
Okay.
but it's restricted for those uses.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of bring up, for those that do know me, those that don't, I do work for behavioral health. And I thought this would be a really good opportunity to kind of bring up the importance of, we have a lot of nonprofits in our town that strictly deal with behavioral health. As far as the naloxone, the name that people most know this is as Narcan. So Narcan is one of those things I think that are very important. Talking about like the incarcerated, the neonatal care, the pregnancy, that is a huge barrier that I see even within the programs we work on. So I guess I would like just to know is there a plan where this money will go? And I would inquire, maybe make a suggestion. Is there a way that you guys can look at maybe some of those nonprofit organizations that treat people that have the opiates with the pandemic and everything, if that would be an option that the city council would care to kind of invest in with that money? That's all I have. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Sasha. Anyone else wishing to comment? Okay. Any other discussion, council? I think, Sasha, that's a good idea, and we may lean on you for some help in bringing those voices together to have a discussion in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that.
Okay.
I could get a lot of people together and kind of do something for you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 23 would look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5825, approving an amendment to section 4-4 of the official city code to include an exception for the keeping of hens, bantam hens, or ducks with a valid permit, and to more clearly define livestock as it relates to the keeping of livestock within the city, to amend section 4-6 of the code to address at-large chickens or ducks, to enact section 27-295 of the city code to allow the keeping of hens, bantam hens, or ducks in residential districts with a valid permit. As a note, this ordinance passed on first reading at the March 6th council meeting and on second reading at the March 20th council meeting.
I'll offer for consideration of ordinance number 5825.
Motion second, and as a reminder, we're on third reading, so no discussion, so I will ask for your vote, please.
Short title.
Short title, I'm sorry.
An ordinance of the city of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend section 4-4 of the official city code to include an exception for the keeping of hens, bantam hens, or ducks with a valid permit, and to more clearly define livestock as it relates to the keeping of livestock within the city, to amend section 4-6 of the city code to address at-large chickens or ducks, to enact section 27-295 of the city code to allow keeping of hens, bantam hens, or ducks in residential districts with a valid permit, provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, now please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, Webb, McCarthy, Murin, Snorton, Clausen. Voting in opposition, Granquist, Arns, and Hildebrand. Ordinance number 5825 carries on third reading.
Item 24, look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5826, approving an amendment to section 2-5 of the official city code to include a permit fee for keeping hens, bantam hens, and/or ducks in the city. Again, as a note, this ordinance passed on first reading at the March 6th council meeting and on second reading at the March 20th council meeting.
I'll second.
Motion second. Is there a short title here? Brianna?
An ordinance of the city of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend section 2-5 of the official city code to include a permit fee for keeping hens, bantam hens, and/or ducks in the city, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, Arns, Webb, McCarthy, Murin, Snorton, Clausen. Voting in opposition, Granquist and Hildebrand. Ordinance number 5826 carries on third reading.
Okay, item number 25 would look for a motion to consider approval of an agreement with Spawn Ranch through a Sourcewell contract to design, develop, and integrate a pump track at the Norfolk Skate Park for a total amount not to exceed $101,592.
I'll make the motion.
Motion second. For some background on this, we'll hear from Nate Powell, our City Parks and Rec Director.
Mayor, Council, thank you. This is part of a donation from the estate of Lee Dekarski. The donation in amount of $114,201.82, and it was dedicated towards the skate park improvements. We went back in 2019. We had a design process to design our current skate park. There were some features that were not completed, I guess for budget reasons. And that would be the pump track to the south of the skate park there, in that field behind the restroom there. And then there's also some shade structures and irrigation, and also a sign or archway, like an art piece for entering the skate park. So the funds, they fell short at the time. So these funds will allow us to complete part of it, at least work on the pump track for now at $101,000. The remaining $12,609 can be used for some of the items that we just mentioned. So before you tonight is the Sourcewell contract with Spawn Ranch, and that is for state bid pricing, and for the $101,592. And staff does recommend the contract with Spawn Ranch. They are the original designers and builders of the skate park. And the expected completion date would be October 23rd.
All right. Thank you, Nate. Any questions? Nate, we've noticed a trend of these estate gifts to parks and bettering parks. Can you again state the name of the family who donated the gift?
This would be the Dekarski estate, Lee Dekarski.
Lee Dekarski. Okay. Well, we certainly appreciate those investments in Norfolk's future. Surely our youth will make good use of this particular addition to the skate park. Any questions or comments?
Nate,
Council?
I got one question.
Yeah.
What, just ballpark, what's a pump track on the construction side of things gonna run? Like after we have the design and everything, this is just the design and the
No,
development?
this is completed project.
This is completed project?
This is completed project.
Okay.
Yep.
Is this what the funds were, he wanted to have happen with them?
It's, for the skate park.
That's what he wanted?
Yep.
Okay, I just wondered what
Yep.
kind of drove it to the skate park. Okay.
I guess I just make one comment. Again, I would probably say thank you to the family for that donation.
We'll be sure to recognize.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. There will be some kind of memorial on site.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Nate. Any public discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Item 26 would look for a motion to consider approval of an interlocal agreement between Madison County and the City of Norfolk for completion of asphaltic concrete paving project M-451-222B, described as Omaha Avenue Overlay.
I'll make a motion for consideration and approval.
Motion second. For some background on this, Steve Ramus, our Public Works Director, please.
Mayor, Council, this particular project would be a maintenance overlay on portions of Omaha Avenue between 37th Street and 45th, and a little bit down 47th, or I'm sorry, a little bit south on 45th to the city limit line. This project was not identified as part of our mill and overlay or maintenance program for this year. However, due to some severity of deterioration of the asphalt slab, specifically on 45th Street, we're getting some shoving or rutting, washboarding going on. We did do some coring in that particular area that showed we had high asphalt content. Typically, we shoot for about 4.5% to 5%. Where the core results were showing anywhere from about 5.5% to 6.75% asphalt. in those areas, as well as a high percentage of fine aggregate in the mix. Typically, we like to see a well-gradated mix. So between the high oil content and the high percentage of fines in the mix, both of those point to the reasons which we felt were reasonable in terms of the washboarding, the cause of the washboarding over there. On 37th to 25th itself, we're seeing some just general asphalt fatigue as well as underlying concrete fatigue. And certainly that stretch between 37th and 25th is where the majority of that is occurring. The section from 37th over to 45th is in generally good condition, would not need a maintenance mill and overlay at this time. And so we've structured a project here to ride on top of the county's annual mill and overlay project. They are currently, will be coming up 45th from the south. If this had not been annexed and was still inside the county jurisdiction, they would bring that on up to Omaha Avenue and continue over to 25th and overlay that section as well. Since we did annex it, it does fall under our jurisdiction now for maintenance. This agreement does not bind us to anything. This agreement would allow us, after the bids are awarded, to move forward with some sort of a project in this area. Originally, they put the project on the street on March 20th, had anticipated opening bids on the 6th and awarding bids on April 11th. As a function of our conversation to ride on top of their contract for purposes of this maintenance project, they've extended their bid opening date to the 20th and bid award to the 25th. Again, so this does not, passing this would not bind us to any contract. It just allows us to move forward with the work after bids are opened, should those come in favorable. Right now, the county's 2023 or 2022 mill and overlay project did not occur because the contractor was not able to get here. It is very possible that should we decide to ride on top of this and move forward and actually agree once the bids are open to move forward, there's no guarantee that this work would still get done this year. The low bidder could be last year's low bidder and have twice as much work to do, and just depending on where they are, we may or may not see this work get done. So there's risk, and again, depending on who the bidder is, maybe we wouldn't want to ride on top of it if the work couldn't get done this year. Maybe we wait and see who bids, and we would be looking to award our local mill and overlay asphalt project to, and could consider adding this work to that contract. So there are some options there for us. In terms of funding for this work, because it was not identified as part of our 1 and 6 year program, our 1 and 6 year program is part of our 10-year CIP. So there would be no additional identified dollars to do this work until you started to look at about 2032, 2033. So the dollar pool that we're looking at to do some shifting and accomplish this work is the dollar pool that we have to work with for the next 10 years. What I'm suggesting here we would do is we have $925,000 in surface seals. We're going to need some of that to be diverted over to the repairs on First Street. But I would look to, currently we're estimating this little under $600,000, but to divert $600,000 of the maintenance seals over to this project to accomplish this. The 25th to 37th Street project, in terms of pavement condition index, when you're looking at a mile of street, you're gonna see some stuff that's good and some stuff that's bad. I would rate that, overall, at about a 45 to 55, somewhere in that category. Just to give you a general idea of what that means. A 50 is considered fair. You're looking at a 2-inch mill and fill type overlay for condition 50. Condition 40, you're looking at a 2-inch mill and fill overlay with some patching. And then it gets, you get into more in-depth type construction. To focus a little bit here on the stretch from 25th to 37th Street, you have two very different pavement sections there. The first half mile, which would be directly north of the Continental Manufacturing Company, that's originally a concrete street. I don't know when that was put in. It's my understanding that the previous county engineer did what we call a white topping, which would be a thin concrete overlay on that back in the mid-'80s. That underlying concrete and white topping has deteriorated to the point that it's not providing the support underneath the asphalt. And so this project would rubbleize that. It would stay in place. It would be rubbleized and just pushed down into the subgrade, and then there would be like a 3 or 4 inch overlay on top of that. The eastern or the western half mile, as you get past Continental over towards 35th, is just a traditional full depth asphalt overlay project. So this project here would do a rubbleization and then an overlay on that first half mile west of 25th, and then it would just be a standard mill and overlay with miscellaneous patching and base improvement. And then, again, as we would head west and look over at the 45th Street, that is a fairly severe type of pavement distress, asphalt distress that's going on over there with that, specifically the northbound, I don't know what's exactly there, but there's 400 or 500 feet there. That northbound lane, that could rip apart at any time. Why wasn't it, part of our consideration as a function of our 1 and 6 year program? It was not in that condition the last time we were updating the program. That condition got much worse over the last year, and I would expect to see that deterioration continue at a fairly significant rate. So we are recommending here, should we move forward, that we would mill and overlay all the way down 45th to the city limits. That's about a 1/4 mile, and then there's about 800 feet west on Omaha Avenue. It's also starting to show this shoving type activity, which is again indicating that there is high oil content and high fine content in that mix. I'm sure there's a lot of questions here, so I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions?
Steve, can you go through that estimate with me real quick? So on number 2, it says shared cost. Are that's our share?
Oh, you're looking at the agenda item. So that's $575,000 would be our cost for the overall project. So I've got a different schedule here that's not on there, but if we look at just the portion from 25th to 37th, that portion is about $306,000. And then as we look at
portion?
the portion, the first half mile west of 25th.
Okay.
So that would be where the underlying, there's an old concrete
Yep.
road underneath there. So that
Yep.
would be the portion directly north of the Continental industry.
And that 306, does that go to their driveway or go all the way to 37th?
That goes half mile, so that goes just past their west
Their
driveway, yeah, to the half mile line. And then the rest of it, that next half mile, and then the work over on 45th is another 200 and little shy of $270,000.
And the mobilization cost of $50,000, is that something that Madison County also has?
They would have a mobilization cost on that too. We do, most of our engineering projects are line item type projects. We have about 9 to 11 line items, depending on which one of those segments you're working on. You know, due to the extent the contractor's already there with the county, we would anticipate that the MOB cost would be fairly low. You know, right now we're estimating potentially as low as 8%, just because they're already there and they're just going to be moving the paving train north. They would still charge us mobilization. They're not going to do that. They're not going to charge us no mobilization anyway.
They will charge us that even though they're right there.
There'll be a mobilization charge. They'll take the overall cost of the projects that they're working on, you know, whether it's the contractor that was low bid last year or a new contractor mobbing in a plant. He'll spread that cost around his projects that he's mobbing in for.
You know, I went out and drove that particular stretch, and I mean, I could see where the 25th west to Continental's driveway is bad. The rest of it, I don't know. I think I've seen some city streets worse than that particular area. And I'm just trying to figure out if the best use of our funds is to go out on a low traffic count road or use it for streets.
And you know, and we had a good conversation around that as a function of subcommittee. And I think just because of that, and unfortunately, we do have a lot of streets that need work. And we have a limited amount of funds for that in our CHAP budget. And so I'm very supportive of making those dollars go as far as we can. There's also the conversation of, you know, and unfortunately right now, we put a lot of dollars worse first. The other side of that conversation is keep the good good. And that's what we're sacrificing here by not doing it, is keeping the good good. If we can, like I say, if this was a county road, they would most likely be coming through and milling that all the way up to 45th and then doing a mill and overlay and crack and seed all the way over to 25th. They don't want to have to mow back in here for a 1 mile project in between two other projects. Also allows you to keep your future maintenance consistent in that entire stretch where you're coming in doing some sort of surface seal, chip seal, blotter seal or something like that. But there is, you know, we have plenty of need within our 450 lane mile system. And by cutting back and just doing at 25th, 37th, and that quarter mile south on 45th does allow us to divert about 350,000 over to First Street.
Steve, this is an interlocal agreement, so approving this tonight does not bind us to doing the project.
That is correct. We would.
It allows us to go into bidding process.
Once they would open bids on the 20th, you know, we can have a conversation about who the low bidder is. We can have conversations about how much work do they think they're going to get done this year, and then we can bring that back to potentially a subcommittee conversation then on the 20th, and talk through those and have a general decision made from there. We would need to be able to commit.
I guess based on the language of the interlocal as it exists right now, Madison County is kind of responsible for making those executive decisions. So as far as I'm concerned, with the language that we have right in front of us, it would be binding. This would bind us. So we could, I mean, we might want to do a document revision. I haven't been privy to those conversations, but I would just want to make sure that if that's the goal, we have this document reflect that.
Typically, they would open their bids, and then we would have conversation about those bids before we would commit to that. That's just typically the way we've always done that.
Steve,
there's no commitment here for us to engage in their contract.
But I think if it's voted as a yes, then it's insinuated in a way that we're probably gonna move forward with this project and be a partner with the Madison County. And I have trouble with it in the fact that if I asked you to rate First Street where we have it coned off, what rating would you give that?
It would be failure.
Right. So,
And that's a main thoroughfare.
and it's a thoroughfare, yeah, it's a main thoroughfare that gets used and that I've heard plenty of complaints on that we're not doing anything yet. I have a hard time to be truthful, I have a hard time spending money on this road. No doubt that it's in city, it's inside city limits now, but to spend money on that road, and I've driven that road also. But move the cones and let me drive that other one, and let's see which one needs fixed first. I'm gonna have to pick First Street, so I have a trouble with this one.
Well, what is the traffic count here? Are we 300, are we 400 cars a day?
Traffic count between 37th and 25th is somewhere north of 1,000 to 1,300-ish.
Okay, let's go 45th south.
45th south, I know at 49th, as you go south there, if you were to stay on 49th, it's about 675 average annual daily traffic. If you were to take that road all the way over to Battle Creek, there's a count at Battle Creek of just shy of 400 AADT.
So we're gonna improve this road when our roads in town need improvement for the Battle Creek commuters to come to Norfolk, and we truly don't have anybody living on these roads.
Right.
I'm gonna say that's where my concern is. I know this is a juggling act with roads,
Right.
but nobody lives on those roads, and the traffic count is not what they are on 25th, Benjamin, First Street, Norfolk Avenue, Omaha Avenue, and we're putting those to the side to carry traffic volume of 600 cars, which might be a far stretched number. So I guess I'm agreeing with Corey is that I have a little issue with
Right. So
not
going
to First Street as well.
I'm gonna roll back to, we need to keep the good. We need to work on the stuff in between, and we need to work on the stuff that's failing. Absolutely, I get it. But we need to pay attention to all three of those categories. And again, unless you go out more than 10 years, there is no different dollar pool to do this work. So delaying this for a year, we're still spending the same dollars. Delaying this for 4 years, we're spending the same dollars. By delaying it and not putting money into it and fixing the issues out there, we're not salvaging any money within our total CHAF 10-year program.
But we're taking the money away from the sealing of the concrete area to pay for it.
We are.
So, I mean, essentially, we're moving around anyway. And if the bids aren't even guaranteed to mill and overlay this season, I'm wondering why we don't just sit down and start talking about what roads we need improved. Because this is where, obviously, this is what we hear, is where people are talking to us about is the streets. And I think this is what makes it tough to be sitting up here tonight going, okay, we're gonna be working on, I know you wanna keep the good.
But this
We're
does
talking
need,
about going from 25th to 45th.
right, this does need attention.
Exactly, I'm not saying it doesn't, I'm just
This
saying that
absolutely needs attention.
you've got,
And
Have we had contact from the industries in the area about this?
I have been
roadway?
contacted by Continental. That was one of the first calls that pulled my attention to it. I think that was in January of this year. They were calling to see if we had that programmed anywhere. And I've received phone calls from 2 residences or folks that travel through that area, from the south or Battle Creek area.
it may be fair to say that there may be some adjustment need to be made to the CHAP budget 10 years out. Maybe we need to look at that again and just.
Well, this won't,
I know you've been.
Yeah, this
it's
won't-
been, things have been in the queue for years, but
right, this won't last 10 years.
I'm not
You know,
saying we wait 10 years.
This could, that
We're
stretch over.
talking, we're already a year, it doesn't sound like it could even get in the construction cycle this year.
Until we see who the low bidder is, we don't know. We don't know if there's gonna be somebody coming in setting.
Which is kind of the point of putting this forward. I think, we want to know that this is not necessarily non-binding, but
Yeah,
this at least allows us to test what what the bid market would be right now.
Or would we be bound to that? I mean, I don't know if we got a clear answer on that.
Well,
Yeah. I
Per-
think-
yeah.
I just appreciate Danny's comment there, because, I don't know, I'm looking at that interlocal agreement, and number 4, just pledge of funding, it just says this amount will be available, unless I'm reading that wrong.
And if I may, I mean, section 5, it says, "It is understood that Madison County is taking bids on 7 total projects, including the Omaha Avenue overlay, and that the contract will be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder on the total of all projects." Back in 3, it says, "The chairman of Madison County Boards authorized to sign any document in furtherance of this agreement on behalf of Madison County and the city of Norfolk, and both parties hereby approve the contemplated construction." So I understand what you're saying, Stephen, about the process. I'm just saying, from what I'm reading and what we're agreeing to here, we are agreeing to the completion
Right.
of this project.
So, yeah, I mean, I've certainly been in contact with Dick Johnson, the county engineer, all the way through this.
Don't negate the
You know,
word.
Dick and I are on the same page in terms of, you know, even, again, it's a line item contract. This is not lump sum. We don't award a contract for $575,000, and then that's our cost. It's line items. We pay for the tonnage we pay that we put down. We pay for the square yards that we mill. You know, if once the bids come in, we only, you know, if it comes in at, say the bids come in at $700,000 for the defined scope, we just cut back on the line item units that we put in, and we put in $575,000. We're not, does that help?
By my read of the contract, I would just say that by signing this contract, we are obligating ourselves to move forward with this. That's just my opinion, outside of practice, outside of working with Dick Johnson. I would be derelict in my duty if I didn't answer that question thoughtfully and honestly based on the language here.
It sounds like we need to take a look at this. Steve, though, this was driven by the timeline of the bid schedule. Is that correct? When was the?
It was. It was driven by the fact the county had a project there. The last time the county had a project, and you know, this was about 2 years ago. We were not aware of that project. Last year we did sit down with Dick Johnson and went through the projects. We were aware that they were going to be coming up there. Again, at that time, we were not anticipating a need. We did anticipate getting into a contract for design with Manelli Wagner, which we did. I think we entered that contract here back in January. So, I mean, we can sit this out and just not participate in that county project, and we can award this independently. Put this out for bids in July, August, and maybe as part of a mill and overlay for 2024, and see how the bids come in.
So you're saying we could just wait till, or
Right. I mean,
take it out of the agreement and then just do it on our own, as far as a look?
we can, yes.
Do we have any
We can-
mill and
we're
overlay?
still, I'd say we're still spending the same dollars.
Right, it just,
We're still to bid this thing out, the work
Whether it's
needs
this
to get
cycle or
done.
next cycle.
You
Yeah.
want it this cycle or next cycle? Do we want to be locked in on this? So, yeah, taking advantage of the county and not doing it on us, generally the county probably sees bids that are 10 to 15% less than ours. So that was just a driver to try and get on here and hang on the counties, do it as part of an interlocal agreement with the county, just reduce cost.
The immediate impact to this cycle, if there was a favorable bid and we're to move forward with the county, would be some diversion from crack sealing, the crack sealing budget this cycle, correct?
I'm not exactly sure when the last major surface seal project was done. It's very desirable that we're doing a surface seal, chip seal type project on all of our asphalt streets every 5 years. and I know it's been at least, we did a micro seal project in 2018, if I recall correctly. That's sort of a chip seal project, but again, just trying to get back in there in the mode of keep identifying dollars so we can keep the good. But those are the dollars that we would be diverting is the chip seal dollars, micro seal or surface seal. And again, some of those dollars, some of those surface seal dollars, we have to divert to First Street as well. I mean, I know it's tough, and you know, Danny, I understand where your position is, and I appreciate that, and I don't, you know, yes, I think moving, you know, if this is approved and we move forward, I would generally anticipate that we'd be moving forward with the scope that's being bid.
Timeline-wise, Steve, if we were to set this aside and table it for right now and revisit it in subcommittee, taking a look at all the numbers that we've referenced here against the backdrop of a larger conversation that we're having now for a larger, broader streets finance plan, would that make sense to be able to potentially come back to this 2 weeks from now and say, okay, we have a clear understanding of what exactly this obligation is if we enter into it, and we think we found the money concretely to pay for it.
Yes, I don't think waiting a few 2, 3, 4 weeks, even allowing the county to get a contract and get it awarded, there's probably still an opportunity for us to engage in a conversation of an interlocal agreement and a change order to their project and still be able to ride on that. You know, and I really appreciate, you know, there's been conversation, I visited a little bit with the city administrator, and I've had some conversation with council members. I think everybody understands that there is a need to identify dollars to go into our streets. In general, of no fault of anybody's here, you know, we're in a failure mode that's just going to continue, like on First Street. We're going to see more and more of that, and so identifying money to put back in there so we can keep the good, get the stuff that's failing repaired, extremely important.
Well, I think this entire discussion underscores the importance of us coming to a resolution on added street finance in short order. So
I will say, I don't feel like anyone that spoke here tonight is in favor of, I think what I'm getting is a message of, we'd like to allocate that money. If we're going to take from that fund, we'd like to allocate that money on streets inside the city limits with high traffic counts. So I think taking it to subcommittee, you're going to get the same responses you're getting here.
I think that's true. I think we also have to take into consideration some of these roadways serve industries that employ a lot of people in the community too, that live throughout the community. So that's another factor. Traffic counts are one thing, but also serving and accommodating existing industry is important as well. So I guess in summary, I'm hearing that would be a reasonable thing to table this for now, drill down, continue that discussion on a larger street finance plan, and consider where this fits. Okay, public discussion.
Jim McKenzie, I would just like to make a comment that this is $575,000 plus the engineering from Magnelli Wagner, which was $51,626,000. That is all due to annexation. So we were in a big hurry to annex so we could grab the revenue, and now the rest of the community is paying for that annexation by fixing the roads that were annexed. So we can't have the money to fix our own existing roads. And I agree with what everybody's saying here. We've got a lot more high traffic areas that need priority, but I think it goes back to that annexation. I just wanted to bring that up. Plus I think we had to pay another $217,000 to acquire Elkhorn Rural Public Power facilities in those annexed areas, which brings that to almost $850,000 that we are paying for those annexed areas. So that annexed area didn't come free with revenue. It's starting to come with a lot of costs. And I think there's some overlay or some work supposed to be done on North Victory Road, if I'm not mistaken, in newly annexed areas. So we're going to pay a lot for that annexed areas. I just want to make sure that we think about that.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment?
So I'm going to embarrass my husband because he works in engineering, but that's okay because I'm going to learn about some of this. Steve, I had a quick question for you. When you say a mill and overlay with a 2-inch mill and overlay, what's the difference of that cost versus if it's not fixed, doing the entire road subgrade and all? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Just off the top of my head, I would say at least 50% more, and it could be double. One of the things that happens. Oh, excuse me. I'd say at least 50% more, and it could easily be double. One of the things that happens as we go into that new and reconstructed method, we have to bring it up to state standards. So we'd have to look at shoulders and slopes and everything else in there as a function of that. So it gets quite a bit more expensive.
And then you mentioned the core was done, and is that where that 40 to 50 or whatever, is that the core, or is that the core and the PSI?
The core, so yeah, we went out there and took asphalt cores. We did 2 asphalt cores so that we could try and identify, why that rutting and shoving was occurring, and that, in those areas, that would be a full depth mill to get rid of that material.
What is the subgrade like right now on that?
Oh, typical county subgrade, in general out there, we're not seeing any distresses, or we're not seeing a lot of distress that would indicate there's subgrade issue. When you start to see rutting and or large areas of rutting that are it's being pushed down into the subgrade, that's would indicate subgrade issues. But in general out there, we're not seeing the types of distresses that would indicate there's subgrade issue.
How long of a period before, like, knowing what it is now with where you rated it to, is there a time frame of when that subgrade would go bad? Is there a reason, like, what's the time frame we're looking at of, like, if this doesn't occur with this amount of time, this is when we're looking at a complete reconstruction or whatever the term's called?
Oh, I would, I think by going in there and doing some mill and overlay type maintenance, we can extend that another 20 years would be a typical mill and overlay life. So I think this would get us 20 years with periodic surface seals, chip seals taking place. Where we're seeing that rutting and shoving, we might have to figure out if we don't move this forward, and we're looking for a longer time frame, 2, 3, 4 years down the road. I would expect this, this could completely rip apart. So we'd have to get in there and at least look at these smaller sections and do some mill and repair.
So I'm just gonna go as a personal, I have to agree with Steve on that, is keep the good good. He kind of mentioned we're looking at least double the cost, and I know you guys have a lot on your guys' shoulders, but I think, is there a way that we can match some of, yes, get the failure ones done, but is there a way that we can put some money towards keeping the good good, and how can that kind of manage together? So I think that subcommittee would be a good idea to try to kind of see where, so we don't have complete failure, repair, wait for the next failure, repair, because if, like you said, at least doubles and then you have to do everything else statewide, those costs are just going to continue to increase. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment?
We're in a difficult situation mainly because we have a chaff budget that's been set up for 10 years out, and we're in crisis mode now. So things have changed a little bit since that. Some of those things have gotten the queue, you know, over the years and have waited their turn to get worked on. So my personal opinion is kind of hard to look at this and make a just decision, because for me, I don't feel like I'm informed enough on what else is coming up and what's down the queue. Even if I look at it, I feel like some of that stuff's going to change priority-wise, just because some of the things are failing faster than other roads are, and we've got some places we really have to focus on fixing. So until we have that narrowed down, how we're going to do that and go about fixing our roads, and we can actually have a plan. You know, I know that Steve works hard to put plans together and come up with some ideas, but we have an issue here. And I think we can establish a very good plan. Just right now, we don't have that. And so without having that, it's making it difficult to even have this conversation.
Well, we have a plan, but we don't have the resources. We have a 1 to 6 year plan. It doesn't go far enough because we don't have the resources. So we have to determine.
Okay, I would agree with you. We
how
have
the
a plan,
resources need to
but
be
has the plan
allocated.
changed due to failure exceeding our expectations? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
And that's what I'm.
I think we have to reevaluate and readjust. And that's why I think we put this aside right now, table it, and
I agree with
dig
you.
down on
I
that.
agree, John.
Well, to go along with your point too, Shane, I think even that First Street closure, really, that repair wasn't in our 1 and 6 year, was it?
No.
So,
No.
Right, that's what I'm getting at.
I think one of the problems is we have not had a winter in 5 or 6 years. And with the amount of ice and amount of moisture we've had over this last winter, I think we've seen deterioration double and triple. If we would have had a winter like this the last 5 years, we'd have seen more of this, but we haven't had that. And now we're,
Yeah. It's also important to note we're not on an island. If you've driven anywhere, in
Yeah,
any
we drive
cities
onto a lot
across
of
the Midwest
communities.
right now,
yeah,
it's
it's bad.
a bad situation.
So I think we
Everybody's
just
facing the same
need to have
challenges.
this, I agree, we need to have this tabled and come up with a little bit better plan. Dig in a little deeper, and then try to make the wisest decision that we can with the funds that we have and move on from there. That's all we can do.
Is that a motion then, Councilman?
I will make a motion. Table this.
I'll second that.
Motion second. Please vote.
Voting in favor, McCarthy, Murin, Snorton, Clausen. Voting in opposition, Granquist, Arns, Webb, Hildebrand.
Yes.
With mayor breaking that tie, motion to table this carries.
Okay, item 27. Look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5830, creating the Norfolk Parks and Recreation Board to advise on all parks belonging to the city and all recreational activities financially supported by the city.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion second, and to hear some background on this, Nate Powell, please.
Mayor, Council, thank you again. The last meeting, we did review the first draft of the ordinance for creating a Parks and Recreation Board. And we looked at the history and the benefits. I could answer any questions regarding that if you guys have any more. The comments that we received at night, I'll just run through them. There was concern about the employee section, so we've removed that completely. There's a request to have a better representation of the community as a whole, so we moved to 9 members, and members from each ward as well is what's encouraged there. There was concern about in charge, using those words, and we changed that to in advisory capacity. The language clarifying the process of the board recommendation, and I'll run through those with you here real quick. So we did take this to the Culture and Rec Subcommittee on the 27th, and then what we came up with is what we have before you today, and I will go ahead and review those. 18-81, who shall be an advisory board to the city council on matters related to all parks belonging to the city and all recreation activities financially supported by the city. that was added. 1882, Section B, the mayor and council shall strive to have at least one representative from each ward serve on the Parks and Recreation Board, if possible. Section C, no more than 3 members from private sports associations shall serve on the board at any given time. 18-84, this is where it said in charge on number 1, so we changed it to serve in an advisory capacity in matters related to parks belonging to the city and establish rules for the management, care, and use of the same. And then number 6, approve and recommend programs, projects, and activities to the city council, which shall be done by placing such actions on a subsequent council agenda for review and approval. So any discussions that we have or anything that they approve, it would go on the next council agenda so council can review it, discuss it if they need to, or move it on. And then the last one would be 18-86, no, A. This would be once a month meetings is what we will strive for. Is there any questions on that?
What's your ultimate goal with this advisory board?
Provide direction. I think that's the, on several matters, you know, just where are we going and how, you know, what does the community want to see? And I think that having that community voice for us, I think helps. I think it helps council, I think it helps staff, and gives us all direction on where do we, like streets, we have limited funds in Parks and Rec. You know, where do we want to prioritize our projects? We all have ideas and thoughts of what we want to do, but I think ultimately it's what the community wants, and I think that's the best way to get that voice.
So you're looking for a board that's, you know, obviously you want to try to, everybody from a different ward, have at least one member from each ward. So you've got kind of a big group or a bigger group of people that can give you direction on what you want to do. Gotcha.
Nate, how does, sorry, Joe. How does one get their name, I guess, on the list to be selected by?
So we do have an application process for getting on a board, and we would, you know, work with communications with Nick and get that information out there.
Online?
Mm-hmm.
We're thinking.
Go ahead, Lyle.
Yes, Councilman, that's exactly right. Lyle Lutt, Director of Administrative Services, City of Norfolk. That's a great question, and we're constantly looking for people to serve on various boards that can be found on the city website. This would be another one that would be there. If you go to the city website, scroll down to the bottom, if I'm correct, find forms.
It should be the top ribbon, yep.
In the top ribbon, it says forms and then application for boards. So I'd encourage anybody that wants to serve the community in a capacity that could be once or twice a year to what you elected officials go through on a day-to-day basis to throw their name in the hat. And then when we have openings on those various boards, we bring them to the mayor and he can choose who gets put on there, and you elected officials sign off on that. So a little advertising, because we always frequently have board openings. Questions about that?
Thanks, Lyle.
Thanks, Lyle. Nate, again, the history on this, a Parks Board existed in the city of Norfolk from, I believe, 1970 to 1980?
1917.
17 date.
1980, that's correct. Any other questions?
All right. Thank you. Any public discussion?
Jim McKenzie, I just have a couple questions as I was reading through this. Section 18-83, letter C says, a member whose term has expired may be reappointed for an additional term by the mayor with the approval of city council. Is that just one additional term, or every time they expire, can they continue to be reapproved?
As it's written, they could continually come back based on the language that's currently here.
Is that what you want? Somebody on it. Anyway, just a question.
Hey, Jim, just as a thought on that, the mayors can change also, right? So as these would come in 3-year terms, it's still up to a mayor's discretion. I would assume, and well, and us as we get to vote on whether we approve of what the mayor says.
I don't think
that
I've
he
ever
would
seen the
like.
council disapprove any appointment, ever, so. But yes, you do have that ability.
Anything's possible, right?
Sure.
All right.
And then 1884, number 1 says, serve in an advisory capacity in matters related to parks belonging to the city and establish rules for the management, care, and use of the same. So those two things seem to contradict a little bit. One is serve as advisory, and one says establish the rules. Sure. Yep.
I'm guessing, I was thinking, do the terms get addressed in the bylaws? I wasn't sure if we generally do that. If you want to limit terms, can we do that in the bylaws?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's something
that's
you
what
could
I-
do within the bylaws.
That's when I would expect them to do that. The second one is in 1881, in the first paragraph, anything that says Parks and Rec Board is an advisory board.
That's correct.
Yes.
Thank you, Nate.
So they will not be establishing rules for the management, is what you're saying? Okay. So it's not what the ordinance says, okay. And then number 6, under 1884, says approve and recommend programs, projects, and activities for the city council. So does that really not mean approve? That means they're approving internally and then recommending?
Based on the language in 1881, the overarching goal of this body is going to be in the advisory capacity. So yes, what you just spoke to, it would be a decision that would be made in an advisory capacity. Ultimately, it would be something that I would foresee being approved by the city council.
Okay.
Nate, do you want to respond to that?
I just wanted to also respond on, sorry, I lost my track here. In 1884, number 6, it says everything that they decide will come to the council and be approved by council. There's nothing that won't be.
Thank you.
And then lastly, I believe that any board that is appointed by subdivision of political government has to require by the Open Meetings Act. So will these meetings be advertised and published according to the Open Meetings Act?
Yes, and my hope would also be televised as well, so you can watch it as well. So it's all public. The agendas would be put out ahead of time so people can read them. The public can come and comment. We'd have a public comment period to discuss Parks and Rec matters.
Seems to be the point. Increased transparency. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, seeing and hearing none. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to enact Chapter 18, Article 4 of the official city code to create a Parks and Recreation Board, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5830 carries on first reading.
Or if we suspend the rules and pass this ordinance on second and third.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rules and approve on second and third readings. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5830 carries on second and third.
That concludes this meeting of the Norfolk City Council. We are adjourned.